what we forgot to do? We forgot to talk about that thing.
That thing. Hold on.
Yeah,
Oh,
that
that's
thing.
right.
I'll cut
There's
this.
Atlus news.
Oh, I'll probably put this way at the start of the episode because it's not going to fit in well with the rest.
Atlus announced that they're going to have a new IP that they want to show off soon, and they want to spread it across multiple medias outside of games. You know, like how Persona has had manga, anime, musicals, etc., movies.
I saw that they announced the cast for the Persona 4 musical, actually.
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
that's. I still can't believe that's becoming a thing.
so what this new IP is, we don't know, but it definitely sounds like it's going to be unrelated to Mega 10 or even to an extent Entry and Odyssey as a whole.
Yeah.
So be something fresh, something new. It's been a while since Atlus had a new IP.
Yeah. So for those who haven't been watching, Atlus announced there's two things they're working on kind of in the near future. One is something very familiar to us, and something is just a new IP in general. Um, I think a lot of people are thinking the one that is based off an old IP is probably an Etrian Odyssey 2 remake for 3DS. So everyone look forward to that. I think they said in about 3 years' time we'll know what that is.
Please be excited for Atlus's new IP
All right.
coming to a previous gen console near you.
Spoiler, it's SMT5, just to make Europe feel worse about SMT4.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cathedral of Shadows, a Megami Tensei Podcast. I'm Rasen.
I'm Katsu.
And I'm Kevin Frane. I'm the translator of Volume 1 of Quantum Devil Saga Avatar Tuner.
Oh my, you're back.
Yay.
I am back. Hey guys, it's good to be back.
It's good to have you back, man. It is fantastic. So, last time we chatted, it was mid-January, and
Yeah.
Quantum Devil Saga was something way over on the horizon. But now,
The horizon is here.
the
It's in our
horizon
face.
is here.
It's right in our face.
Yeah. So in 2 days, as of this recording, Quantum Devil Saga is going to be out, and it will hopefully be in people's hands right away. So we thought we'd have Kevin back on here and just chat it up with him a little bit about the release, a little bit about his experience with translating Quantum Devil Saga, and what's it like, having this release come up and all that. So I guess just to start it off, how's everyone's day been so far? Anything
It's been
exciting happen?
alright.
It's all good.
Yeah, no, nothing really special happened.
Oh.
I had a business lunch with one of my writer friends who had written a manuscript and wanted some feedback on it. So editing and storytelling is still the order of the day for me.
Accidentally get like a little bit of ketchup on the manuscript and then apologize profusely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Better than people juice, as Quantum Devil Saga will probably teach us.
Yes.
So I guess actually we should give a little explanation for what Quantum Devil Saga is exactly, for just maybe the people that aren't aware or haven't seen the previous episode, which I'll probably actually link to in the description. Just for everyone that needs to know. So, Kevin, I guess you should do the honors for this one since you're so involved with it.
Yeah, and also because I'm being so close to it, and it is a hard thing to explain. People are confused to what Quantum Devil Saga is, and if you're one of those people, don't worry, I'll explain it for you right now. So, a long time ago, meaning 2004, Japanese fantasy author Yu Godai was brought in by Atlus to work on a Megaten spinoff, and the story that she came up with was Digital Devil Saga. Now, as part of her contract, what wound up happening was she was allowed to novelize her own story. So, flash forward to 2011, Quantum Devil Saga comes out in Japan, She'd spent a long time working it and reworking it. So these aren't the novels that Digital Devil Saga was based on or anything. There's no relation to Digital Devil's story by Aya Nishitani, which is where the SMT franchise ultimately owes all of its history to. But it's sort of the original plot creators, re-envisioning of her story as novels instead of video games.
It's pretty much a remake.
Yeah.
This is the only remake of Digital Devil Saga we'll get, guys. Just books.
And it's weird because not even just they're not even so much a remake as just a different vision of the same type of story from one of the original author's perspectives, or original writer rather.
A final mix.
Because she's actually credited second in the scenario writing for Digital Devil Saga 1, although she does get the parenthetical that basically attributes the actual plot to her, even if I don't think she actually wrote the game script itself. But she did invent the story.
Okay, now that we all know what Quantum Devil Saga is, I'm sure many of you are trying your hardest to figure out how the hell you can get this in your hands so you can read it.
So you can read it.
Your greedy, ravenous hands.
Yes, your greedy Megaten fan hands that have long since been worn by all of the blood, sweat, and tears that Megaten has caused you. I guess then this is being published in English by Bento Books.
Yes.
Yes, and there's a large swath of information available for the little release plan that they have going on here. So the official release date is July 31st, but I think they said that they're able to ship some of the copies a day early now. Is that correct?
I think it's entirely possible that there are copies in the mail as we speak.
Okay, that is exciting. And
by
then,
the time this podcast airs, people might have copies of it already.
Ooh, that is exciting. Actually, this one thing I guess we should say real quick. I think Katsu and I would love to thank Bento Books for providing us with early review copies for Quantum Devil Saga.
Yeah,
So,
we got early copies. Sucks to be you guys. Losers.
My God, Katsu.
We read the whole volume 1, and it was super good.
It was really good. Everyone go buy it, like now.
Yeah,
I'm glad you both like it.
It was fantastic. It was a great read.
Phantasmal.
Yeah.
It was quite the read.
But I will say, yeah, just Katsu and I both enjoyed it. Katsu and I both messaged Kevin after we were done and went, holy shit, this book's amazing and all that, and we're all able to talk about it. And we're going to avoid spoiler discussion for now, since, that's unfair to everyone who has to actually wait for it and all that.
Has to wait out the release.
But we will have probably another spoiler discussion podcast within a month with Kevin on again, so...
Yeah, no, I'll definitely be back.
Yeah, we are totally going to discuss this book in depth, because there's a lot to talk about, I will say that.
There is a lot to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And all the parallels to Digital Devil Saga 2.
Yeah, let's see. Well, I guess going back to the release info, sometimes apparently it can take a few days for Amazon to just process and get that hardcover version up. So it might take a few days for that to come through, it seems. And then also, apparently, on that note, international branches of Amazon sometimes obtain stock a little later, so that might be a few weeks or so. But in about a week, the book should be available for order from brick-and-mortar stores, like in general, because it is, from what I understand, a national distribution. So you can go into like a Barnes & Nobles or something and... just have them order it for you and they'll send you a copy. So, very easy way to get your hands on the book. I mean, we're getting a hardcover, we're getting a softcover, we're getting it digitally, so, a lot of options there for people that want to get the experience.
Yeah, so no complaining.
And then, I guess, since we're still in that pre-order phase, and I'm going to rush myself to get this out. There is actually a promotional code going on for people that still want to pre-order the book but get it with free shipping, or at least $5 off depending on where you are, right?
Yeah, if you're international, it's going to be $5 off, and if you're within the U.S., it's free.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. And that promo code, which we talked about last podcast, but I'm gonna say it again, and I'll have it on the screen, is @_preorder or AT
Yes, I think it's
_preorder.
AT for Avatar Tuner.
Yeah, that's what I'm. That's what I just realized that myself. So yeah, AT_preorder. You enter that in when you go on Bento Book's site and order it and everything, and that is a $5 off for shipping, or if you're international, it's just $5 off in general because it's a bit more.
And I believe you can use that through the 30th.
Yes. Okay. So right up until the day of.
Yeah, basically at that point, I think they're going to take down the pre-order page and just put up an order page.
Yeah.
At which point the pre-order code won't be good anymore.
Yeah.
But you'll still be able to get the book.
Yep. So use that to your advantage. It's a really nice offer, to be honest. I used it. Katsu, I'm pretty sure you used it too, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Go get $5 off, free shipping.
Yep.
Yay. And then I guess, of course, all the links for this are going to be provided below in the description, along with various Bento Books, social media, and stuff like that you can go there and ask questions, and I'm sure that they'll respond to you, and they'll help you out with whatever questions that you can't get answered here or anything.
Yeah.
And then I guess the last thing is that, from what we know, the success of the first book, or the first volume of Quantum Devil Saga, is what will determine if the next 4 get translated.
Yes, so please buy one copy, buy 2 copies, buy 10. A copy in every home.
Share the love of Quantum Devil Saga. Does your 11-year-old nephew need a birthday present, and you want to suffer him emotionally for life?
I was gonna say, you want your child to grow up in a bleak world with no hope and questioning existence and one's humanity, then Quantum Devil Saga is possibly the way to go.
There you go. If you want to make someone feel really emotionally disturbed with all the violence and philosophical questions that Quantum Devil Saga raises, you should tell them to either order it for themselves or maybe give them a little gift, maybe an early Christmas present.
It is a thought-provoking read, but if this were a movie, it would be a solid R.
Yeah.
No question about it.
Rated R.
Oh, definitely. And that's, I think, part of the reason why Katsu and I loved it so much. It is Megami Tensei through and through, even though it kind of isn't. It's mostly its own IP. I think you said last time, yeah. But yeah, this is enjoyable, and I'm sure you guys listening to this don't want to have only 1/5 of the story, because I know as soon as I finish this book, I'm like, I need to read the next 4.
I need to read volume 2. I need to get on its stat.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, and it's one of those things. If you are into these books and whatnot, please tell your friends. With a niche product like this, word of mouth is huge. So, just spreading the word and getting it out there. Because especially, even in the last few days, this book is less than a week from release. And I'm seeing a bunch of people pop up. It's like, wait, they're bringing the Digital Devil Saga novels over in English? Now? And, clearly people who had not heard of this. And so, there's some, actually some really good, strong last-minute buzz, which is very encouraging. That, so many people are finding out about it.
Some of the major gaming journalism sites are just now reporting it.
Yeah, just yesterday, Anime News Network picked up the blurb, and it went crazy. And the amount of mentions that I saw for Quantum Devil Saga went through the roof compared to what they had been. A lot of the word getting through the grapevine that way, and that's excellent to know that people are picking up on it, and and they still have a chance to get in the pre-order.
Yes. Even I saw some guy mentioning somewhere on Twitter, I played those games almost 10 years ago now, or however old they are, and I can't believe there's more. There's more from this world to experience, and we're getting it over in English. We never get stuff like this in English for these small Japanese role-playing games and related side materials and stuff. So it's really exciting too, because especially for me, I just finished Digital Devil Saga 2 maybe a month ago, and I part of the excitement for me is I'm able to go through it again, the experience, but with a lot of twists and turns and a lot of differences and stuff, and kind of learn more about the characters and the world as a whole, and I really, really appreciate that. It's a really exciting time to be a Digital Devil Saga fan.
And you guys have both read the book, so you know I mean it when I say take nothing for granted of what you
Yes.
think you already know.
Yes. Oh my. There. Ooh. You'll get curveballs. So many curveballs. Um, See, because I want to say them, but I can't. Got to
Next
save
month.
it. Yes.
Next
Next month
month.
we can. Next month we can pour our heart out.
We can squee.
Yeah, we can squee at everything. Oh my. Um, it is definitely nuts. So I guess yeah, just end of the day, buy it. If you're a Megami Tensei fan, go out, buy it, support the original writer of Digital Devil Saga, or at least
Yeah.
one of the main influential forces in there too. So
Yeah. She actually just got in touch with me last week for the first time, and we had a couple of brief exchanges, and it was really cool. She's very, because none of her books have ever been translated into English before this one, and she's actually really looking forward to the fact that because I mean they just had the 10-year anniversary of the original game's release, and it's like now it's very poetic and fitting. She thinks that like here we are 10 years later, and now finally a whole new audience gets to see these books of hers.
it's really crazy to think about, isn't it? Because we had the PSN releases, and it's like you said, the 10th anniversary, and now these are coming out. It's really kind of like this resurgence of Digital Devil Saga, and I keep seeing so many more people that even outside of Megami Tensei, they're just discovering the games and loving the experience. That like it's almost kind of they were big when they came, or at least they were well received when they came out. And from what I understand, it was one of Atlus's better selling games of the time. Obviously nothing compared to like Persona or the stuff that came a little bit later, but still it sold pretty well. But then now it seems like there's just this big boom of Digital Devil Saga love coming in out of seemingly nowhere. Like no one could have predicted this, and it's really
The
happy.
digital devil
Like
explosion.
yeah, it makes me really happy to see because it's like this is a great universe, this is a great story, and I'm glad so many people are finding it.
Yeah. Finally, Digital Devil Saga is getting the press that I think it should have gotten a while ago,
And
10 years ago.
little,
It,
little baby Katsu at 14 is like, wow, this is really good. And now look at him now.
hey, better late than never, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my. So I mean, yeah, like I'm you know pouring my heart out about Digital Devil Saga Katsu. This must be pretty exciting for you because I
I
mean
know.
these are
Digital
your
Devil
games,
Saga
man.
games.
Yeah. Um.
I recently found my a USB drive with all with all my old saves from like Nocturne, Digital Devil Saga 1 and 2, Persona 3 and 4.
Oh my.
So, yes,
Trip down memory lane.
trip down
Um.
the line.
I guess now that we've covered all like the release stuff and all that, um, I guess it's time to really question you, Kevin, about maybe just the experience as a whole. So,
Sure thing. Lay it on me.
okay, I guess the first thing is, how does it feel being so close to the release? I mean, you're a few days off,
Ah,
man.
it's surreal. Like I I mean, logically, I knew that this was going to be happening at some point. But now that I mean, I'm probably less than 48 hours away at the time of this recording from the book officially being out, and it's amazing. I mean, for the last couple of weeks, I've basically been in like a 24-hour like Quantum Devil Saga news cycle. I have like all of my social media and like internet alerts to like notify me like as soon as anyone starts talking about Quantum Devil Saga somewhere on the internet, like it gets sent to me because like I need to see what's going on. I'm like, all right, and then like because people have questions, people want to get involved, and I'm just like, hey, like I like to be very active, with social media that way, and
Yeah.
to not just to help get the word around like for my sake, but just like to help the book and the story succeed, and to there's an audience out there for it, and they're clearly really excited, and they're only just now finding out about it. Um, and I'm happy to do my own part to sort of get that going. But like, just like in the very final stages of the book, like when it was time for layout and those like finicky last minute tweaks. I know I sort of got into this the first time I was on your guys' show, where I'd mentioned I had started reading the rest of the series, and I have since finished reading the whole series, And based on that, I was like, all right, like, no, like there's some things in Volume 1 I want to change. Like now that I've read the whole thing, like, all right, hold on, like I want to tweak that, adjust that, and like it was like little things, but like getting that in like under the we got to send this off to the printing um, people like deadline was kind of fun. And there were some fun internal discussions that unfortunately I can't talk about, but
Yeah.
we were all we were all very animated about the final stages of production.
I mean, even you're talking about just you like being involved in all that. It really made me smile when just random days I'd log into the like our Mega 10 subreddit or like DDSNet and I'm like, oh, Kevin made an account. Hey, Kevin.
Yep.
It's talking to people, answering questions because it's really cool because a lot of times just people involved with like smaller projects like this sometimes they're just not available to answer questions.
They're just not available, or they're just like whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think it hopefully shows through just in hearing me talk about it. Like, I am legitimately personally excited for this. Like, and I think part of it is because, I don't need to be as distant from it if it like were like truly my own work. Like, this isn't my story. Like, this is somebody else's story that like I just happen to think is great. And like I want people out there to read it so that they can. I mean, because when I was translating this, I was experiencing it for the first time, same as like anyone else picking up the book for the first time. And like I think that the people who have been waiting for this, I hope they all really like it.
And I mean, actually, I guess I'll just ask this question I just thought of. I'm sure as a translator, sometimes you just get put on stuff that you could probably care less about or you don't think is that great. So it must be really like surreal finding something through your job that you just go, this is amazing and I love this, and now I get to translate it. So I'm sure that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, like as a freelancer, you're always looking for work, and if you have time in your schedule, you take on whatever jobs people are going to hire you for. And thankfully, I work, mostly with pretty fun things. Like I said, most of my work I do is in video games, and I guess now stuff like this. So I mean that's cool, but I mean there have been plenty of times, either both as freelance and when I was working internally, that okay, it's like a video game, but it's not necessarily like a game I would personally be interested in playing, or for any number of reasons. I as a freelancer, I had to translate a lot of like the smartphone like CCG things, which like that's also not really my thing, but there were a lot of them and people needed them translated. So I'm like, all right, you're paying me to translate it. I'll translate it. Here you go. And then something like Quantum Devil Saga comes along, and I was a little wary at first, again, partially due to my confusion of what this was. I was like, wait, somebody novelized a JRPG, and I'm like, okay, like I guess that's not so bad. And I'm like, okay, and I'm like Mega 10 spinoff, like it's not even real Mega 10. And then like I actually started doing it, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm like, this is actually really good.
This is amazing.
Yeah, no,
I must read more.
Yeah, and I did. I took my own personal time to dive right into this series. I mean, that was great, and it's rewarding to know that my own enthusiasm hopefully has allowed me to put my best effort into it.
Yeah. And then I guess kind of segueing into the next topic I want to talk about. I just thought because since I just recently beat Digital Devil Saga on the podcast recently, I've been splooging about it and telling everyone how great it is. Katsu's always been telling everyone how great it is. And now you're here and you're telling us about your experience loving Quantum Devil Saga. So
I remember even asking you, and I'm like I don't know too much about this stuff. I'm like, how is Digital Devil Saga received like amongst all these different megas and stuff? I'm like, no, like people think they're pretty good, and like now here I am 6 months later, and like everyone's like Digital Devil Saga,
Digital Devil Saga's amazing.
Oh
my god!
That first podcast, it was funny because I had to BS my way through all of the DDS stuff I just knew from being a Mega 10 fan because I had played maybe up to the first boss of the game, and then I'm like, oh, Quantum Devil Saga interview thing. Katsu knows about this, so if I say anything stupid, he can smack me and correct me. But then you too. I think you said at the time of that last interview we did that you had started Volume 2, or it was.
Yeah, I just started Volume 2 reading it.
Yeah, so like it's really funny just then we both kind of knew that, like, oh, DDS is pretty good, and this world is nice and all that.
Yeah, this world's nice and all that,
Now
but yeah.
here we are months later, both of us have experienced it in some form or another, like, oh my god, this is the best.
I listen to the soundtracks all the time when I'm working. Like, oh god.
Oh, the soundtrack is just so amazing. I love the music of Digital Devil Saga.
It's raining outside right now, and I'm thinking of the junkyard.
Oh my god.
So what I was gonna say is, I guess just I think sometimes maybe because we know, but sometimes it might be hard for an outsider to understand. What is it about Digital Devil Saga or Quantum Devil Saga, just this world that we love so much? And I guess I just kind of want to ask the three of us here. I guess Kevin, do you want to start? Like, what would you say you love the most about this verse?
You know, I think what it really boils down to, and this is especially prominent in the first volume, but it's a question that's carried through the whole thing, is that at its core, what the whole Avatar tuner thing is about, it's kind of like, like, all right, like what does it mean to be a human, to be a person? It's like, it's a very existential sort of question. And like, like what does life mean in the grand scheme of things? And there's this whole idea of, interconnectivity, and it's told through the lens of this group of people who has never been given cause to question their own humanity until it's been taken away from them. And the analysis of that is just fascinating. And like, it's, you've got these like multifaceted, very well realized characters, and how they all adapt to who and what they are individually and as a group is really, like, it's super engaging. And it's, by the time I got done with volume 5 of the series, like, I actually spent like a good couple of days just kind of quietly contemplating, like, what does all this mean to me? And like, not just in like a fictional sense, but just kind of like, okay, like, well, like, what does all of this mean in the grand scheme of things? And it's like, it's very thought provoking in a way that I like.
Yeah, I guess I'll jump in on that too. Is something that really took me with Digital Devil Saga that I just really loved as I went through one and then finally beat two last month or so, is I kind of realized over time is that Digital Devil Saga is kind of sold on this premise of what I like to call the Rendon, the Slaughterin', the Devourin', as the game puts it. Just you turn into demons, you eat people, and things are bad. No, and it's kind of this like sci-fi. I don't want to say B movie, but like this sci-fi horror, gory, super duper edgy kind of premise. And like, it's like, okay, that's really interesting. I like that. And then as you get more into it, you realize it's not about that so much. It's about how that premise affects the characters and how they all adapt to it and grow because of it. And I think that's really where I love Digital Devil Saga, is it's just so character focused, and you, by the time the story is done, you deeply love every single member of the Embryon that you've come in contact with, even when they do something you don't agree with, or even when they kind of fuck up, or
Cough, heat, cough.
yes, even
Yeah. Heat's an interesting case.
he is, because he's
He's
kind
probably
of
the
that
least.
guy.
He's probably the least changed character in Quantum Devil Saga. He's exactly the same.
He's pretty.
Oh, hang on a sec.
Oh, okay. Well, Katsu does that. I will say though, what's really interesting is just, I guess even with Heat is he's
Okay,
kind
I'm
of.
back.
Oh, okay. There you are. I was just saying that the case with Heat is very interesting because it's almost a character that you're sort of set up to dislike in many cases, at least in the game. And I guess even in some parts of Quantum Devil Saga, it's like, Heat, I don't know if I agree with you on that. But like, I totally 180'd on my opinion of Heat by the start of DDS 1 to the end of DDS 2, where I'm like, I really respect Heat. I can
Yeah.
see where he's coming from, and I care for him as much as I care for the other characters in the Embryon and all that. And then Katsu, I guess, do you have anything you want to add on with why you love Digital Devil Saga so much? Just.
All right. Well, I guess this is a big question. Most of our listeners have been wondering, why do I like Digital Devil Saga so much?
You never have gotten into it, so.
Hello,
Yeah.
Uncle Katsu.
Okay. Well, when I first played Digital Devil Saga, it was just just a random. It was just another game in the Mega 10 franchise that I just wanted to play because it looked remotely interesting. And when I started playing, when I first started playing that first hour or so of the game, I thought it was like, man, this is pretty boring. I don't really care about these guys, and then I kind of just stopped playing. And then about a week later, I started listening to the music of Digital Devil Saga and Digital Devil Saga 2. And then I was like, oh my god, this OST is amazing. I need to pick it up again. So when I started, I didn't know where I was and restarted the game over again. And when I did restart it over again, something just clicked in my head. It was just things started falling in place, I guess. I
Suddenly your
started,
eyes shone and they like got
yeah,
color.
yeah. The emotions, my emotions awakened.
Katsu's Atma awakened.
Yeah, my emotions awakened.
He started
But,
eating his other PS2 games.
but then, then yeah, I started really getting invested in the story. I was like, why do they need to rend, slaughter, and devour their enemies? I'm like, why are all these people just now feeling these emotions and stuff? Why is things happening the way they are, and so on and so forth? I wanted to know just as much as the characters did. And so at the end of Digital Devil Saga, when things started, you started seeing the big picture. You're just like, oh my god, I don't think this is the way it's supposed to be, guys.
Yeah.
And then, damn, Digital Devil Saga 2, and what a trip DDS2 was. By the end of that game, I was in love with every last character.
Yeah.
Like,
I think one of my favorite moments in Digital Devil Saga 1 is when they're in the tunnels with Lupa, and then
Yes.
Lupa asks that question, and then like
Yes.
everyone just stops, and then you're just like, wait, and you're like, oh my god, what?
yeah,
My
that's the. Oh my god, when
that
when he said that, things just started. I was just like, oh my god,
I think
what is going
even
on with this world?
I think even I messaged Katsu and just a group of other friends that were in on Skype. I said, I love that moment so much because it kind of picks at like a video gamey thing that you never think
Mhm.
about when you play video games.
And
And
in
then
this case, it's a plot point.
then you go, "Oh wait, that is really weird. Why hasn't that been a thing?
Yep.
I just didn't care because this is a video game and I'm not supposed to think about
Yeah, I'm
that."
not supposed to think about that, but when he brought it up, I was just like, oh. And then
It's
also, and there's also the thing that Cielo was talking about with, Schrodinger. And they were like,
Mm.
hey, I've never seen that before. Why is this
yeah.
here?
And the questions start to roll and then you realize the brilliance of everything. And I mean, even
Yeah.
if you look back at the cutscenes or if you play through them again, you start to realize all of the hints that were dropped that you missed, and it comes into play so well.
Like how, like when they went to go rescue Sarah, how did Surf know that was an amusement park?
Oh, things like that, yes. Yes, those all fall into place. And I guess actually one thing I wanted to talk about the characters real quick, and I don't want to get too in depth here because I want to save it for the next month's episode. But I think one part of Quantum Devil Saga I really enjoyed is well, actually we talked about this last time, is Surf has a personality
Yeah,
now.
Surf has a
Yeah.
personality. It's insane. I'm not used to him talking.
Yeah.
Every
Yeah.
every time he speaks, I hear Yuri Lowenthal in my head. I hear all the characters' voices.
Um,
And
what?
I think it's important that he does speak and have a personality because in this case, it's not a game; it's a story now, and you need your main protagonist to have a degree of what you call agency in the storytelling biz, where not only do they have things at stake, but they have some ability to affect the world around them,
And
Yes.
and you can't do that with just a blank slate.
yeah, and I think one thing I really enjoyed is that I don't, and I said again, I don't want to get too in depth with it. I really love seeing Surf kind of act as a mediator between all of the various extremes of the Embryon's personalities,
Yeah.
because you kind of have him telling Argilla how to deal with like how to cope and deal with the situation. You kind of have him trying to
Yeah,
rein in heat a bit.
lashing out at Heat, having him rein him in, and like telling him to relax.
Yeah, and then you have him kind of telling Gale to start thinking maybe a bit towards how people feel and to not be such a cold, brutal tactician. It's really
And
interesting to see kind of how he acts as a leader and how he gets
he,
everyone to
he,
work
he
together.
sort of quietly encourages Cielo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's kind of like
Right.
Cielo's big brother a little bit.
Yeah. I think Cielo is probably his characterization is the most different between the
Yeah.
games and the books.
It's
Hmm.
definitely the most different.
Like, because he's distinctly younger in the books than he is in the games.
They
Like, to the
mention
point where
him
he's.
being young in the games, but it doesn't
Yeah.
really show it.
It doesn't really look
No.
like it either. He looks the same age
No.
as everyone else.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, he certainly looks younger than, like, Gale or Heat, but I wouldn't, like, put him at,
Yeah.
like, super young.
Yeah. In the books, they kind of he appears a lot younger,
Yeah.
and that actually works into the plot too. Kind of just him being
Yeah.
younger and a little bit more immature than the rest. Really interesting to see how all that works out. Oh my! So now that everyone knows how amazing and why we love Quantum Devil Saga, Digital Devil Saga, all that, I hope that explains to just people unfamiliar with that series at large, or maybe even you're here and you don't know what Megami Tensei is for some reason. You're listening to this podcast, but at least hopefully we could shed some light for you on why we love that branch so much. Now, I guess getting more into Megami Tensei stuff, Kevin, I guess I've kind of been able to talk to you about this in private, but I thought maybe you'd like to share with everyone. How has your experience been with the Megami Tensei fan base as a whole?
Oh, people have been great, and like you said, like I went out there, I made
They
forum
only
accounts and
they only
whatnot.
like you because you weren't translating a Persona novel.
Oh, hey now, let's not get into that
Yeah.
schism quite just yet. You
Oh
guys
my.
can rend, slaughter, and devour each other on your own time. Don't drag me into it. No, people have been really great, and people, I think, like you said, like a lot of times you don't have people who are involved in products like this interacting with fans, and so when you do, people like everyone's been very polite and like very like excited. A lot of people asking questions, and like never rudely and never like overstepping anyone's bounds. Like people have actually been really cool, and like folks understand, like, okay, like I understand if you probably can't answer this, and I'll be like, yeah, no, like unfortunately that's something I can't talk about. They're like, oh no, that's okay, and like nobody's making crazy demands. And again, just like there's an honest love that people have for this corner of the franchise, and that's really cool. Like any time I see a thread somewhere about like, hey, I'm looking into getting into Shin Megami Tensei, where should I start? Like 9 times out of 10, I hear Digital Devil Saga, and if it's not Digital Devil Saga, they say Persona 3.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, Digital Devil Saga is
yeah.
pretty entry. It's
Hmm.
pretty
But I hear
It's a
Nocturne
really
a
good
lot
starting
too,
point.
actually. But people are like, you'll probably want to get into Nocturne, but play Digital Devil Saga first and then do Nocturne,
Yeah.
because like it's less to learn all at once.
I agree with that. I think Digital Devil Saga 2 is a bit more refined of a system and a little bit easier to get into gameplay wise.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, people have been great. And again, folks, there have been times where like I'll say something over at like one forum, and people will take that and they'll like repost it for me in other forums, like, hey guys, like the Quantum Devil Saga translator had like another update for us. I'm like, oh thanks, like that saves me time, and now people, the word has been gotten out, and the folks are like, make sure you buy like 12 copies, and I'm like, well, I wouldn't say that, but I mean, please do if you want. If you really want 12 copies to give to all your friends, I'm not going to stop you.
I think too, in a way, you represent the hope that exists for other Megami Tensei stuff to get, because I mean, even we referenced before, there are Persona novels, there are like the
Mhm.
original novels, all that. Like I think kind of in a way, this project as a whole, and you being the translator, kind of represents that. Hey, we're kind of at a point now where these are feasible for people and companies to produce and bring over to a Western audience,
I mean,
which is really fascinating.
on a certain level, this is a test case in a sense. If not explicitly, then at least just you know in effect, that's sort of what would end up being. Like, hey, is there really a market for translated Japanese novels that tie into a weird JRPG franchise in some way? And it's looking like the answer might be yes. I mean, fingers crossed.
Yeah. Oh my. Then I guess too. I think we've kind of talked about this privately before too. But have you had any interest in picking Digital Devil Saga 1 and 2 up, or have you already? Or
No, I really so actually I was just asking Twitter the other day because I apparently the PSN versions have like a weird slowdown sync issue that like affects cutscenes and like slows down like battle sequences and whatnot. And I've been like trying to ask around, like, does anyone know if they've patched this? And I don't think they have yet.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
think they have.
Yeah,
which is
unfortunately.
unfortunate because like I was watching cutscenes that had this issue, and I'm just like just on YouTube, and I'm like, ooh, like that's really unfortunate. Like this is a really dramatic scene, and the impact is ruined because like halfway through Argilla like trying to like get her emotions out, like her line gets cut off, and now Gail's talking while she's still subtitled, and I'm like, oh no. Um, but I mean, hopefully I'll get my hands on it some way or another. Um, as someone who works in the video game industry, technically, I'm like a little leery about just like pirating it. Like,
Yeah,
just like because really this is like the industry that I make my money off of. I don't want to do that. Also,
yeah,
just
Mhm.
as a creator myself, I know I would feel pretty offended if people pirated my stuff. Please don't pirate Quantum Devil Saga. Please buy it.
yes.
Yes, please
If
buy
you
it.
want volumes 2 through 5, please buy it.
Yes, exactly. And
Yeah.
also, that's not cool. I mean, Kevin worked his, heart out and getting this available, and it's not cool to just get it out there for free like that.
Yeah,
Oh,
man.
yeah, and like also, like as much as I'm asking people, hey, please, buy the books to support the series, I also want to support like the series itself my own way, like with my own money. Like, I'm sure that on some level this all goes back to the people who brought Digital Devil Saga to us in the first place. I mean I think that's only the fair way to do it.
Yeah. Um, I mean, like we said before, the only way we're getting volumes 2 through 5 in general is if they sell, and I guess
At this rate, I feel like they're gonna sell.
I really hope they do, and I believe they will too, because this is an amazing story. I believe World of Mouth, no, Word of Mouth will go by super quickly, and from what I understand, just I really think the hype and just what I've seen from the community is so strong right now that I really think the word will spread, and I think people are going to be in love with this book when it comes out. So yeah, just please support the official release.
Strong as the pre-order hype is, I'm just bracing myself for what it's gonna be like once the book drops, because I
Yeah.
know there are people out there who are like waiting by their doors for their like mail carrier to come by, and as soon as the book shows up, they're gonna go up into their room, shut the door. They're not gonna come out until they're done reading it, and as soon as they're done, they're gonna go online and they're gonna tell all their friends like, "Oh my god, guys!" And then start writing like surf and heat fan fiction maybe, and I don't know. It's cool. It's
Implying Surf and Heat fan fiction don't already exist.
It probably
no,
does,
but I mean they'll probably write more of it.
but Quantum
Yeah.
Surf and Quantum Heat.
Oh, yeah, especially Quantum Surf. Poor Quantum Surf. He's not as manly appearance wise as DDS Surf.
They actually
So
point that out.
Yeah, they
yes,
put that
they
out several
pointed it.
times. He's fairly androgynous in
Yes.
Fairly
appearance.
androgynous and slim,
Mm.
and pretty average height. While Heat is all big and burly.
So for anyone that's interested in writing a fan fiction now, and then I guess just in general with the project, looking back on it, what would you say that the biggest challenge was with this? I know we kind of got into it last time with just the various issues that had come up that you had to deal with and mess around with translation wise, but now that it's all said and done, it's about to be out. What would you say your biggest challenge you had to face and overcome was for this translation?
So for me, and this isn't actually Digital Devil Saga specific, for me it was just learning how to translate a Japanese novel at all. Uh, I've had plenty of translation experience. I mean, I have it professionally even. I've got over a decade under my belt, but nothing like this. And I hadn't read a lot of Japanese fiction lately either. And so a lot of things like turns of phrase that would crop up in a Japanese prose narrative, the way that, paragraph structure and dialogue interweaving work in Japanese isn't the same as in an English novel. And I actually think, I mean, that was really difficult, but it's probably the most important thing I learned from the whole thing was just familiarizing myself enough with translation of a new form of media. And I like to think that in the time I put into it, translating it and then going back and retranslating it and doing my edits, that over the several months that took, that I honed my skills enough to put together what is hopefully a good and readable product. And certainly by the time I was done reading Volume 5, I was already reading these books with an eye towards, okay, if I am, hopefully, fingers crossed, going to wind up maybe translating more of these if it does well. And, not to say that I'm necessarily going to be who is chosen. And, if they bring the rest of the series over and I'm not the one to translate, then I'll still be happy, like, for the story. But just my ability to even just read with that sort of translator's eye sort of came more into focus. And so, I mean, yeah, you're sort of asking like what was like the biggest challenge, and it was just sort of just learning how to do that. And I hope that the answer is that I did learn how to do it at all, and uh, just that what I've done will be useful for future translation projects, whether it's more Quantum Devil Saga novels or other, novels through other publishers, or non Quantum Devil Saga bento projects. If I ever get offered anything like that, I don't know. Does that make sense as an answer?
Yeah, yeah, I get where you're coming from with that. That makes sense. It's probably definitely a very different experience from what you were used to coming from the video game translation background, right?
Yeah, no, definitely, and we'll probably get more into that later,
Yeah.
just in general. But yeah, I mean, I just wrapping my head around the process as a whole. It's one of those things where obviously translating Japanese to English, like on the surface, it's the same set of skills, but you have to employ them suddenly so differently. And
Mm.
getting to the point where that was a non-issue was very challenging.
Next question. I think this is a big one too. How would you pitch the novel to someone who hasn't played the games or maybe isn't even interested in video games as a whole? Because I guess it's safe to say now that I've read the whole thing too. This isn't really just a novel for gamers or for Digital Devil Saga fans, or this can be read by I
Yeah,
think sci-fi fans as a whole.
just read by people who don't even give a hoot about video games.
Definitely, and I think that's an audience that can definitely be reached with this. So, Kevin, how would you pitch this to someone who isn't into games so much?
So my flippant answer would be with great difficulty. But no, I think the fact that it's not just a video game book is actually an asset, and it's one of those things that I would like to stress. I mean, it does make marketing positioning a little more difficult, but I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, this is a deeply nuanced, Japanese science fiction story set in a really unique and well realized world, and it explores a lot of existential and philosophical themes, but with a very like visceral, violent and action packed backdrop, and sort of you know exploring the human condition through inhumanity. That sounds a little pretentious, but I mean, if you're gonna be reading these books because you already like Digital Devil Saga, I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer. Um, but there's not a whole lot in the way of like bizarre Japanese science fiction that also has a thought-provoking element and also is in English. So
Yeah,
I mean, if that's the sort of thing that you're interested in exploring, I mean, this is a great thing. And also, like, if you're into science fiction and you've only mostly read Western science fiction, if you're an English speaker, then the chance to sort of see, science
it's
fiction
a
through the lens of another culture.
yeah, it's a rare opportunity.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't read the same as most Western science fiction novels. That's not to say it's completely different. I mean, there are certain tropes and trends and ideas that crop up that are similar. But I mean, I think that if nobody told you this was originally Japanese and you read it, you might be able to tell.
Just something I guess I want to get into then on the same topic before we get on is I guess a good way to kind of spread the word and get people maybe not so much into the video game side of things, but maybe just as a sci-fi fan or just a literature fan as a whole. Write reviews, guys, like on various sites and whatnot, or various
Yeah, write reviews on
places.
Amazon, on whatever other book place that has reviews.
Yeah,
I
just
mean,
spread
Ross
the
and
word.
I have review copies, so we're probably going to review it.
Oh, well,
Yeah, like
definitely.
Goodreads is a big popular site for book reviews. When it's up on Amazon, go throw a review up on Amazon.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of ways to get the word about this book's quality out there and get people interested that maybe a little intimidated by the whole video game stigma maybe. And even that probably is kind of weird to call it that, but some people when they first hear about something like, oh, it's a novel based off video games, like how does that,
How does
uh,
that work? Do I need to play the video game first? I don't like video games.
yeah, stuff like that, and it's definitely not the case with Quantum Devil Saga, and I think there's if sometimes if something like that can't be cleared up, it could be the case where just people that would enjoy this and fall in love with the story, maybe they're a little too intimidated to get into it, and they just kind of miss the opportunity. Whereas I think we as fans should find ways to clear that up and find ways to really push this book's quality and vouch for it being I guess not really even bound to just being a book or a video game or whatever. It's just a good story at the end of the day. Um,
Yeah, I
and I
mean,
think that's
Goda
something
is not
important.
even like a video game person. Like she's just an author who like got brought in to do the story for this one game, or I
Yeah.
guess two games really, two games that are one story really. But
Hmm. Yeah. Um, and then I guess just with that, we can move on to the next question. Is how I guess would you say is the writing slash editing process like as a translator? Because I'm assuming it's a lot different than writing something on your own. And I think you even said before in our last interview that you've written books and stuff like that and published other stories of your own. So how is the like being the translator of someone else's book? How does the process differ and how is it the same?
yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely not the same as writing my own work, and it's also not the same as translating just video game text. It's definitely its own thing, and it's it's one of those things where just as a translator to do something like this, you really need to be like essentially you need to be really good with Japanese and really good at English. Um, you know, which is to say, like, well, you're a native speaker, of course you're good at English. It's like, well, it's a little more involved than that, in sort of just knowing how to phrase things properly and whatnot. Also, so that your editors later don't hate you, it helps if what you start with is of good quality.
That's true.
It, yeah, there's it. One of the like the big things to sort of take into account is just letting the words flow as naturally as possible while you're doing it, because and this actually holds true for regular writing, is that you can always go back and fix things later.
Yeah.
And it's important to get words down on the page first, because as much as you might think that it's easy to just revise things in your head, it's a lot harder to hold ideas in your head than you might normally think. And
Yeah.
to have words on a page and then rearrange it that way, rather than to think of a sentence and then re-edit it in your head before you've written it down, is a lot harder.
I know guys who have written like the entire stories of their books before actually begin the process of writing chapters down.
Oh yeah, and I mean everyone has a different process, and I've actually been on a lot of panels at like conventions across the country. People ask like, oh, like how should I do X when it comes to writing, and like the answer a lot of time boils down to is like, well, what works for you? Okay, do that, because what works for one person doesn't work for somebody else, and vice versa. Um, but in the case of translating here, it's a big part of it is sort of figuring out, okay, how do I want this to sound, what should the voice be. And I think a lot of my natural writing voice comes through in the translation of Quantum Devil Saga, and I'm not entirely sure how much of that is just for the fact that I wrote it and how much of that is just because of the fact that Quantum Devil Saga is a story that I just identify with and you know might wanted to have written on my own given the chance.
Interesting, very interesting, and
Interesting.
I guess with that too is with translation as a whole, you have I guess not only just with books, but any sort of media that someone's translating, is you have kind of this struggle sometimes with wording something and making it sound good and clear to a Western audience, while also trying to get across
The
the original,
message.
yeah, the original text message or intent. So I'm sure at some point in the novel, did that ever come up where it's like this sentence might skew the author's intent a little bit, but it sounds better this way, like it reads better, it flows better? Were there any sort of challenges like that you came across?
Yeah, fiction translation is actually all about finding the balance between those two extremes. And this is sort of where I like to sort of think of it this way, where translation is equal parts art and science, where for any given term or phrase in one language, there's an acceptable list of terms and whatnot in the target language that you can use to represent that. And then at that point, you need to have the right degree of artistry and creativity to know which words to use to represent that. And
Yeah.
the short version, I mean, that's just kind of a fancy version of saying like, all right, there's a there's a difference between what something says and what something means. Like it sounds like the same thing, but they're actually different when you think about it. And how literal do you want to be versus how well do you want it to sound? Thankfully, most of the time, that's actually not like a huge issue. And every so often, there'll be like a terminology thing where it's like, okay, like you just wouldn't say something like that um, in this other language. So how do you get the same point across? So an example that I was thinking of actually based on this that comes to mind, because it was actually something that I stopped and I spent a good couple of minutes thinking of before I settled on it, is there's a scene early on in the first volume of Quantum Devil Saga where um, Surf has tasked Cielo with showing Sarah around the base and like getting her stuff ready, and he's very enthusiastic about like fulfilling these duties, and he's like, all right, and he's like, like, yeah, it's like, that's a good point. And I think what I have him say is like, like it's going to be my job to set a good example for her,
Yeah.
because the whole point, because Cielo, he's the child of the embryon basically, like he's like the youngest one, and now finally like it's his turn to be like the big brother, like, okay, now you're showing another person who's new how to do things. Now like in the Japanese, what he basically says is like, I have to be her senpai. And while that's certainly a term that I think a lot of Megaten fans would understand, I'm not gonna. You can't just throw the word senpai into an English manuscript, and certainly not in a scenario that like it's not Japanese high school, it's not a Japanese company. I mean, it's a military base in the junkyard. So
Sarah
the
isn't Sarah
yeah,
isn't waiting for Surf to notice her.
no.
Yeah. Surf already notices.
Oh yeah, no, he certainly did. Um, but no, so in that case though, but like in that context, what senpai means is like, okay, he's the person that she's going to be looking to show her how things are done, because he's he has the experience, and part of his responsibility is not just to teach her, but also to look after her. And that, without getting into too many spoilers, that certainly is you know one of his bigger functions. And so
His bigger responsibilities.
knowing how to phrase that, and like I was like thinking out loud to myself, like I'm like, all right, like, oh man, like how do I want to render this? And then the idea of like, okay, like being the person to set the example, and I'm like, okay, like that's quick, it doesn't draw the sentence out super long, and it if it 99.44% gets the point across, I mean, I'm sure that there are people out there who would be like, "Oh God, like you can't translate senpai. It's a Japanese term from this perfect inviolate language, and then like you just can't represent that in English." And it's like, well, bullshit. Of course you can, and I'd like to think I just did. And there are times where sometimes like a character will make a joke, and jokes are so language dependent that like at that point you have to change it to something,
Yeah.
or else it's just like it's not gonna like flow. So it's like, okay, like what can you say that's at least similar, that like is of the same level of like jocularity, and like okay, if the original joke isn't too offensive. um there's a line where one of the characters basically says, in Japanese, it's like, the church can go eat shit, which ironically does not sound as bad in Japanese as it does in English, but in English, it's like, the church can go fuck itself. And
I remember that line.
I remember that.
And the thing is, and that comes out, and that is a stronger insult in English than Japanese, but the fact of the matter is that to convey the degree of blasphemy behind that line, I needed something stronger in English than just like, oh, like the church can piss off or the church can go to hell. But like, somebody says like the church can go fuck itself. At that point, like everyone in the room stops. And it's just
I
like,
stopped.
did you just say that?
Yeah.
Yeah, spoiler, there's the F-bomb pops up in the well, I mean, I guess they say shit in the games at least. I know that, right?
Yeah, that definitely that line took me by surprise too. So yeah, that definitely the
Especially by who said it.
Yeah, by who said it too.
I debated whether I wanted to do it. I'm like, could I tone this down? But I'm just like, it was like my gut instinct was, I'm just like, I need to, like, it needs to be the church can go fuck itself, and I left it in there, and the editors were like, like, yeah, no, like that is the right way to put this. So, and there you go.
And it worked. It definitely worked. That was a very, very striking moment. And then I guess
And I like to believe that the character in question would say that, given the circumstances.
Yeah.
I'll just say that.
It was I think that's definitely a big character moment for that person too.
Yeah, I mean, and then people are gonna be like wondering, like, who is it? And I wonder if anyone.
Is it?
Yeah.
I think there are some obvious choices and some less obvious choices. And...
Yes. Yes, indeed. No spoilers here. And then I guess just few we're towards the end of the line here, but I thought this would be a really important, or I guess interesting question to ask is you told us, before about your history with translating video games and just that whole entire period where you worked on a lot of games and stuff like that. And I mean, even you still kind of work on games now too, right?
Oh yeah, no, I've done a couple of video game projects since finishing up the main translation of this book.
Oh yeah, so you've been around that side of the road and all that, so you're very familiar with that. So I guess it'd be interesting to just talk about how different is it. Just well, I guess we've already kind of touched on this, but how different really is it the experience of translating a video game project versus a novel?
A lot more different than you would think, and a lot more different than I would have thought. To go back on the whole my rambling thing about what the most difficult part of the novel process was, and I was basically like all of it. For video game translation, it's very much about just blocking out amounts of text to get through in a day, and just sort of kind of it's very clinical. For a lot of it, just because there's a lot more text in video games than just dialogue. Like all of like the UI stuff and like your error message and your save messages, all of that has to be translated too. All of like the invisible text that you don't even really think about seeing, that's just sort of part of the game experience, that still needs to be translated. And that's, I don't want to say it's brainless and thoughtless, because it's not just translation you have to account for. There's also localization to consider. Like, if a certain term works better in English than what you would a direct translation would happen. Like a good example is Digital Devil Saga 2 Berserk mode, which like is like Rakshasa mode in Japanese, but it's like that doesn't mean anything to an English speaker. Yeah. And like you could translate Rakshasa as like it's some kind of demon from. It's like no, like knowing to change that to something else is an important part of the process. And also, you have things like text-based considerations, which for a long time were the bane of every video game translator's existence, where you just don't physically have the room
for the
to fit
longest
text.
time.
Final Fantasy 1.
Yeah. I think it was especially. I think it was especially true for like Wii games, because I know there's this game called Muramasa, which came out for the Wii first, and the Wii version had a lot of translation problems because there was limited text space to work with. But then fast forward to the Vita version, much more text space to work with. and all that stuff. And the translation for the Vita version was a lot nicer, a lot better overall than the Wii version.
Yeah, and like a lot of times sometimes it's just because when the game was originally developed in Japan, they weren't thinking with localization in mind, and so like the text input system that they have in place just isn't designed to like work very well.
Yeah.
And no, that's less of an issue now. I mean, most developers have gotten better about that. Although in a weird way, it's kind of come full circle because with like iOS and Android and other like handheld, even like 3DS to a lesser extent, being as popular as they are, now you're suddenly back to games where you have a very small screen and you can only fit so much text on. So like the problem has come back in a different form.
It's back with a vengeance.
Yeah.
But and the other thing though is there's a lot of dialogue in video games too, so you get to work on your character voice and whatnot. And that's actually, if you're lucky and you have a game that has a good budget and you can afford to do like a pre-production run first, where the translator has time to familiarize themselves with the game, and then play through it, and then sort of work with the localization company to sort of establish tone, like, hey, how does this character speak versus this character? But that's all just plain dialogue. You don't have prose surrounding any of it like you do in a novel, which, as it turns out, makes things very different, especially because the way prose and dialogue interweave in a Japanese novel is not really how it works in an English novel. Just to sort of explain what I mean by that is that in a Japanese novel, you'll have like a line of dialogue followed by a line of dialogue followed by a description of who those two people were and what they were doing when it happens. Whereas in English, it's like, so hey, comma, Surf said, turning to Argilla, we should probably go kill these people. And then like Argilla scratched her, she's like, I don't know about that. I don't really like killing people, Surf. Like, it's just the interweaving is just different.
Yeah.
Also, I promise you that's not a real scene from Quantum Devil Saga.
The best dialogue.
It is the best dialogue, although I
Yes.
think it is pretty in character for both of them
Yes.
in a very silly way.
And then I guess which what do you prefer? I guess you're a bit newer and less experienced with the whole novel scene of things, but if you had to pick one, would you rather go with game translation stuff or like would you rather go with the novel translation stuff? Which do you prefer?
If you had to ask me like right now, like, okay, you have to pick right now that you can only work on either one of these two things again for the rest of your life, I'd probably have to go with novel translation just because this has been such a rewarding process. Not the least of which because like Bento Books is really cool about like translators getting their due, and so like it's kind of cool to like be noticed for my work. But it's not just about that. I mean, like for most video games, nobody knows who translates those. A lot of times the credits don't even say who translated them.
Yeah.
Which it's just a fact of crediting in the video game industry. I mean, that's been a thing for a long time, and it's probably not going to change anytime soon. Especially,
it's not going to change.
especially with Japanese dev being more and more niche in the Western market. But we've got the faithful keeping it alive, so that's all good.
Mhm.
But no, I think just the level of creative engagement in a novel is so much higher, and I hadn't. This is probably. This is gonna sound cheesy, but translating Quantum Devil Saga Volume 1 is probably like my proudest professional accomplishment. Just getting to be a part of it has been so amazing, and fingers crossed if there's a chance that I can be part of it for a little longer, I would absolutely leap at the chance. Like I would drop everything from my schedule if it meant being able to take on more of these books. Just because I do have such a love for them, and I legitimately enjoyed the process. I mean, we mentioned earlier about how like when you're a freelancer, you don't always get to pick what you work on, and most of the time you don't get to pick. And so a lot of times you just slog through something, you churn it out, and you get it done, and you collect a paycheck. And with a novel like this, it's more than that. I mean, it's not just more than that; it's a lot more than that. And I think that the opportunity to get to sort of feel both a level of professional pride and creative fulfillment, and then to even like to do stuff like this where I am allowed to be excited for Yugo Life Story, and I'm excited for people who have been fans of these games for 10 years. Like they are finally getting like these books that nobody ever thought they were going to get. Just to have even like played a part in allowing that to happen is like immensely gratifying and frankly rather humbling. Like just you know, we talked back in January when I was first on the podcast. I had no idea what I was getting into at that point. Like, clearly, like I am overawed at just where this has gone, and I really hope it takes off. I hope that book one of this paves the way for books 2 through 5, and I hope Quantum Devil Saga paves the way for other Japanese novels to be brought over.
Yeah. 'Cause I
Um,
know the Blaze Blue fandom especially would like to get their hands on all those Blaze Blue novels. Tons of Blaze Blue novels.
I didn't even know those were a thing, really.
Yeah, there's a ton of Blaze Blue novels that tie into the story, and like a lot of the Western story mode players don't
Get
really,
that.
yeah, they don't get it. Certain stuff goes over their head, etc. and so forth.
God knows that
For a
story.
moment, I got Blade Blue confused with Guilty Gear, and I was like, "Are there novels about Bridget?"
Oh, jeez.
The answer is
Yeah,
probably yes somewhere. They might be
probably.
like Dojin novels, but I'm sure they exist in some form.
Oh my. But yeah, I mean, even just being able to like talk with you in private just during this whole thing, ever since like January, we've once or twice like poked at each other and just caught up on things and all that. I've been able to see how excited and just how like personally happy you are with how this has all come together, and I think that's really cool because you spent a long time on it and you worked hard on it, and I mean, it seems like the fan base is just as excited as you are, and it's really looking to be a great release. So hopefully we get four more releases like this with the rest of the
Yes.
series.
When we're talking like presidential stuff, it's all 4 more years. Here, it's 4 more books.
Yeah, four more.
4 more books.
Y'all want to
Quantum
use it
Devil
as your
Saga.
like battle cry for tournaments. Like you can have that one for free. I won't charge for it.
There you go. I mean, even just various times I've poked at you and asked if you wanted to live stream and just do various stuff. We're able to talk about the release and stuff like that when we were doing all that, and how exciting it is that it's finally happening. And now we're here, and it's like you said, less than 48 hours before it drops, and people will be able to experience it, and that's just really cool. I guess just to close it out, is there anything you want to talk about? Any closing comments or anything that you want to say, Kevin? Or
Just to thank all the people who have like been part of like getting the word around, and having been interested enough over the last few years that a publisher picked up on the fact that people wanted this book at all, and that now heck, by the time a lot of people listen to this for the first time, it'll already have been made a reality.
yeah,
And just like it's and part of why I really want the rest of the books to come out is just I want somebody else to talk to about them. Like, it's like, oh my god, like I want to like pick your brain about like all these like cool things that happen, and just the ability to do that'll be really cool.
oh my. So yeah, I guess we're kind of out of stuff to talk about, but Kevin, I wanted to thank you for coming on again and messing around with us. I mean, even before doing live stream stuff and all that, which was a lot of
Oh, that
fun.
was already fun too.
I being called a casual while Kevin laughed and the chat
Yeah.
made fun of me.
Rasen and confirmed casual.
Yeah. And then even with that too, I'd like to thank Bento Books again for, well, I guess, picking Quantum Devil Saga up, but that and I guess just providing Katsu and I with review copies too. That was very nice of you guys, and
Yeah, that was super cool.
that was really like that was kind of a moment I think for both Katsu and I where it's like this stupid little podcast thing that we do for fun is
We made it.
yeah.
We made it.
And
That was probably one of the first. Well, that was probably. Well, I wouldn't say it was the first time, but it was one of the very few times when I'm just sitting here like, wow, we actually made it.
yeah, it's fun to be a part of stuff like this. It's fun to be able to talk to people that are working really hard on getting Megami Tensei stuff and just however related it is to just get stuff like that out and just delve into this crazy community that's kind of built up. And it's just been a really fun ride. And it seems like Katsu dropped from the call, unfortunately. Oh
Oh
well.
no.
But yeah,
Oh, I do have one last thing to add,
okay.
and this is a shout out to the two editors who worked on this book, who are Joseph Reeder, and I apologize if I'm saying his name wrong. I've never heard anyone say his name out loud. I've only seen it in writing. But Eli Alexander did a phenomenal job editing this manuscript. I mean, I'm the person who took the Japanese words and made them into English words, and then they went and made my English words into good English words. So, I mean, I cannot take even like half of the credit for just how the finished product sounds and whatnot. And I'm hoping that if people like the way it reads, I mean, then I was talking earlier about how translators don't get enough credit for the stuff they do. I don't think editors get enough credit for the work that they do. So I wanted to make sure that you know, people know to appreciate them. Their names are on the little indicia page, like just inside the front cover of the book, where it has all the copyright stuff. You can see them there.
All right. I guess yeah, it is a group process getting stuff like this out too. So, everyone that's been involved, I'm sure, is happy to see that this is finally coming out. And like I said before, if you haven't ordered it already, there's the pre-order thing in the description. If you're listening to this as soon as it comes up, because I'm going to rush super hard to get this out before the 31st, it's @AT_pre-order is the code for the $5 off. And just everything you need to know, all of the bento book stuff is going to be in the description. And I think we've about covered it all. Unfortunately, Katsu's internet died. Luckily, that didn't happen mid-recording.
That is also good, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a preview chapter if you want to read that too.
Oh, I will link that below too. There is a preview chapter if you're not yet sold on the idea of Quantum Devil Saga and you want to experience the first bit of it for yourself. It is quite lengthy too, and it gets the point across.
Yeah, it's actually all of chapter 1.
Hey, I'm alive.
Oh, there we go. Okay, Katsu, you arrived just to say goodbye. So,
Yay!
yeah.
What actually happened was I accidentally removed the battery of my laptop when I was scooting it closer. The battery just dislodged itself.
Classic Katsu. So I guess really we're good. So thank you, Kevin, and I guess we'll talk to you. We'll talk to you in about a month for spoiler discussion of Volume 1 as soon as everyone is. I think a month is a good enough chunk of time for everyone.
Yeah, so hurry up and read them books, guys.
Yeah, I'm sure people after a week will be like, "Can you do the next episode?"
We'll have to yeah, have to keep sending tweets out, tell people have to wait patiently.
Please be excited. Please understand.
Yeah. So I guess that's really it. So thanks Kevin. Thanks Katsu.
Yes. Thanks me.
Yes. Thank you. And then I guess we're it. So everyone go have fun with your Quantum Devil Saga experience. And
Yes.
Bye everyone.
Bye.
and come again.